Wearing weighted clothing has obvious appeal for anyone who's a fan of Dragon Ball. This is a common trope in Dragon Ball. Goku or whoever else, Piccolo, will be fighting an opponent. They won't be getting very far because they're not fast enough or strong enough, and then they'll reveal that they're wearing weighted clothing all along. They'll take it off, it will thump onto the floor and shake the ground, and then they'll be super fast, super strong, and they'll wipe the floor with whoever they're fighting. See Goku versus Tien or Piccolo versus the androids. And in fact, training under increased gravity conditions is a common trope across Dragon Ball, because of course we also have the scene where Goku trains with King Kai using 2-ton wristbands, or whatever they are, and then you have the gravity room where they train under times 10, times 100 gravity, and very quickly develop insane strength and agility. And the cool thing is that this is pretty similar to how it works in real life. You take a weighted vest that makes you heavier, and then you perform lots of repetitions of the exercise that you'd normally do. And it's got a really cool name as well. Some people call it hypergravity training, which is just awesome. It can also be called gravity doping. And it really does work that way. It allows you to make a normal movement more difficult so that when you perform it without the weight, you become super fast, super powerful, etc. So take a chin-up, for example. You're doing pull-ups and you want to get stronger. You want to be able to do a muscle-up or a clapping pull-up. There's a few ways you could go about this. Maybe you change the movement slightly, do one-armed chin-ups, for instance, one-armed pull-ups. But that's not a perfect analog for the movement you're trying to train. Otherwise, you can increase the rep range, just do more repetitions of those pull-ups. But again, this is training muscle endurance, not explosiveness. You can perform the exercise more explosively, but it's not as efficient as just adding extra weight. And now you need to recruit more muscle fiber in order to be more explosive, more fast-twitch muscle fiber in order to generate more power through that movement, through the exact same movement. Then when you go back to that movement and train without the weighted vest, you'll find that you can much more easily launch yourself up into the air. You almost can't help yourself from flying up straight past the bar. Obviously, pull-ups are one example, but there's loads of other exercises that are well suited to this. Pretty much any calisthenics, so things like crawls, things like push-ups, press-ups, clapping press-ups, things like squats, air squats, pistol squats, which are also extra difficult because you've now got your weight behind you. All kinds of things can be made more difficult by wearing a weighted vest. Studies show that performing jumps with a weighted vest will increase your jump height, which is no surprise because once again, you're recruiting more muscle fiber, more fast-twitch muscle fiber through the exact same technique. These studies are very limited though. One often quoted study looking at the effect of weighted vests on jump height found that the effect was actually extremely minor and that there was no noticeable change in women, weirdly. Where the most notable change was observed was in the initial pre-takeoff velocity, how quickly the participants were able to drive their bodies through the ground to launch upwards. That makes a lot of sense given that the vest would help them to recruit more muscle fiber more quickly as they made this movement. It's just that this small difference didn't translate to massive gains in jump height. The study has a lot of methodological problems though. For instance, it only had 18 participants who were all recruited from a college, and they were not given nearly enough time to train in order to see long-term results. The study only looked at immediate changes. Chances are that over time and practice and training, improvements in the acceleration and movement would translate to much greater gains in jump height. This study used a vest weighing 15% of body weight, which we'll see is kind of the recommendation. Of course, at the same time, weighted clothing is fantastic if you want to add a drop set to your calisthenics routine. So a drop set means doing as much as you can of a really heavy weight, then lowering the weight so that you can keep going, go past failure. This is great for metabolic stress and it really triggers rapid muscle growth. It's also great for muscle endurance. This is normally hard to do with calisthenics or bodyweight exercises, once again, unless you change the biomechanics of that movement, essentially doing a different move. Or if you take the weighted vest off before you reach failure, you'll benefit from what's called the post-activation potentiation. What this means is because you've recruited more fast-twitch muscle fiber, you've used more networks in your brain related to that, they're now lit up, they're kind of primed, they're warm. Their resting potential is increased, meaning they're easier to recruit next time. That means that you can't help but recruit more force when going through that movement pattern. And that's why when you perform a really heavy movement and then go on to a lighter movement, that lighter movement feels really light. In this case, if you performed, say, 3 chin-ups using a weighted vest, took off that weighted vest, waited for 30 seconds, then performed more chin-ups, you'd find you were flying, you'd feel super light, just like Goku. At the same time, training with a weighted vest is also a great form of cardio. You'll find that when you train this way, you burn more calories simply as a result of wearing that vest. You don't have to do anything different. In one study, it was shown that walking with a weighted vest equivalent to 15% of the wearer's body weight could help them to burn 12 or 15% more calories without doing anything differently. And this makes a lot of sense because you need to recruit more muscle to perform the same task. And muscle requires oxygen, meaning the heart needs to work faster to deliver the oxygen and the nutrients there. From my personal experience, training something like a rope climb with a weighted vest, which is brutal by the way, but make sure to really build up to it, it's also very hard on the body, is a fantastic way to get your heart rate going, to be really panting and breathing heavily. It's just an excellent form of resistance cardio. And it's better in my experience than just increasing the weight on a resistance machine, for the heart at least. Likewise, I think that it's going to burn more calories than walking whilst just holding dumbbells. And the reason for this, I think, is because the weight is evenly distributed across the body, you need to deliver extra oxygen and extra nutrients to all those muscles, meaning the heart needs to work extra hard instead of just to one point. At the same time, there's no benefit of momentum. You can't cheat, it's everywhere all the time. And so you end up gasping for air and burning more calories. Wear this throughout a normal workout, potentially burn an extra 12 to 15% more calories, and that's a fantastic way to very quickly transform your body composition. One study looking at participants going through military-style training for 6 weeks found that wearing a weighted vest could improve their maximal oxygen consumption by 100% compared with a non-vest wearing control group, though this wasn't actually statistically significant, with once again only 37 participants in total. At the same time, this turns every exercise into a weight-bearing exercise, every activity into a weight-bearing activity, and this can also help to strengthen and harden your bones to prevent injury and just make you tougher. So should you go ahead and act like Goku or Piccolo and wear weighted clothing all the time? Unfortunately not. There are a couple of limitations. The first one is that having a lot of weight on your shoulders in particular can put a lot of strain on your body. Likewise, doing things like explosive jumping is going to put a lot of impact on your knees, and that can be bad for you, of course. So you need to be careful, you need to limit the amount you're doing, and you certainly need to build up to it. I'd recommend not using too much weight to begin with. That 15% is a really good option actually, and you'll find that you don't need much more than that when you're first starting out. I certainly don't. You always have the option of making the move slightly more difficult rather than adding more weight. There are some ways you can mitigate this. For instance, some weighted vests try to take some of the weight off your shoulders and put it across your waist, but it's still an awful lot of strain on the body, so I wouldn't recommend doing this all day, every day. Plus you get really hot, it chafes, you just beat yourself up basically. The other problem with this is that wearing a weighted vest all day would change your center of gravity, and that would potentially alter the way that your brain thinks about your body. It would get too used to moving with the weights so that it would become less efficient at moving without the weights, and you might struggle with things like balance. Your body has learned to balance with your weight over countless years of practice. If you suddenly put more weight on top than down below, you're going to mess that up a little bit. If the weight was perfectly distributed across your body, that might be a different story, but no piece of equipment can accomplish quite that unless you go into a gravity room. That said, it is a really cool concept, so if you'd like to see me attempt to go a whole day or a couple of days wearing a weighted vest, let me know in the comments and we can see if we can make that happen. So I hope you found this video useful and interesting. Let me know if you use a weighted vest. Let me know what other cool training tools or methods you use in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel if you want more like this, and thanks a ton for watching this. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.